You are looking at a car that is the last of its kind. This is the Lotus Emira, and it's going to be the last internal combustion engine powered Lotus. Lotus's next two vehicles, which sound equally as Lotus as the Amira, the Elettre and the Amea, are both four-door all-electric vehicles. So how well does this Amira send off this era of Lotus? I'm happy to say the Amira performs quite well. Just because Lotus is going electric doesn't mean they've forgotten how to make a proper gas sports car, and it starts with the looks. This thing looks incredible, especially in this yellow paint. It attracts so much attention because it's basically been designed like a baby supercar. There are two engines available for the Amira, an AMG-sourced turbocharged four-cylinder or a Toyota-sourced 3.5-liter V6, which is the same 3.5-liter V6 that Toyota uses in many of their own products, except here it has been supercharged and makes 400 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. It also sounds like no Toyota ever has. All right, driving the Lotus Amira. Driving this car is one of the most connected experiences I have ever had with the car, and that comes from three main characteristics of this vehicle: the steering, the manual transmission, and this engine. Starting with the steering, this is hydraulic steering. What it means is that you feel really connected with the road. It also means the steering is pretty heavy, but the results are super direct and precise movements when you are cornering, and it doesn't feel at all like any other steering I have ever experienced in a car. It's heavy, but in a really good way. It's quite unique, and I really love how connected it makes me feel with this Amira. I'm absolutely loving the steering. The transmission is also incredible. I first drove this car in its automatic form, and it was a very fun experience, and I loved driving this car in the automatic, but this manual transmission really elevates the driving experience of the Amira. I love the shifter itself. It is aluminum, like a Honda Civic Type R, so it feels really good to shift. It's also one of the heavier manual transmissions I have used. When it is in neutral, it takes effort to move it out of neutral and put it in gear. It is very unique in that way. It's not the easiest to use, actually. Like, a lot of cars are buttery smooth and seamless in bringing a car from neutral into gear and shifting between gears, but you really have to be intentional with your movements in this Lotus Amira, and that's not a bad thing at all. In fact, I think it makes me more engaged in this vehicle. I am very cognizant of what I'm doing with the shifter, and also just this window, being able to see the mechanics of the shifter underneath the center console. That's one of the coolest things in any car that I have ever driven. Definitely elevates the interior experience. You can't really appreciate it while you're driving, but even when you just get into the car, you get to see all of the mechanical works that are going on underneath the gear selector, and that's just really cool. And then there's the engine. If I didn't know this was a Toyota source 3.5-liter V6, I would never have guessed it. My very first press car I ever drove actually was a Camry TRD, which has this same 3.5-liter V6. Obviously, that one is not supercharged. That one makes like 310 horsepower. This one makes 400 horsepower, and this car is much smaller than a Toyota Camry. But it's kind of cool to come full circle and see what Lotus has been able to do with this engine. It doesn't sound like a Toyota 3.5-liter V6. It doesn't drive certainly like a Toyota 3.5-liter V6. And especially in sport mode, when you let your foot off the gas, it crackles and it pops, and it sounds amazing. There are three different drive modes in the Amira. It starts with Tour mode, and Tour is the softest of the three modes. The engine is the quietest, and you get the least amount of power out of the engine. It's definitely just meant for the everyday side of the Amira, because this is a car that you could live with. It's very spacious in here. I have full screen Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. These seats are really comfortable. You know, there are heated, are there heated seats? No, but there's automatic climate controls, It's not too cramped in here. There's a good amount of cargo space in the back, and there's some cargo space behind these two seats. Interestingly, there is no frunk in the Lotus Emira, which most sports cars in this category, like a Porsche 718 Cayman, do have frunks. This is a very light little sports car, and it handles incredibly well, just like you would expect. It is darty, it is quick. You point the steering wheel, this hydraulic steering wheel, and the car will just go. You can push it incredibly fast. And it's also super playful. If you get on the power at the right time, the back end will kind of slide out on you in sport mode, at least, and definitely in track mode. That's the third driving mode. Sport mode is actually my favorite. I feel like the engine crackles and pops the most in sport mode, and it still has the traction control fully on, but it lets you be playful, which is really fun. And then track mode gives you all of the engine and exhaust performance with less traction, but I am keeping things in sport mode. That's where my happy medium, and you need to know your driving level with this car, because things can get out of control, but it is just so fun swinging this thing around corners. It grips and it lets you have fun, and then you put your foot down and you can hear the supercharger whine of this 3.5 liter V6, and it's just so much fun. But when you dial it back a moment and you're not trying to push this car to its limits, it is, like I said, surprisingly comfortable in here. These seats are really good. There's an impressive amount of room in here. I don't feel cramped at all. There's plenty of space for two people. There are these nice cup holders that do fit my water bottle, except they are kind of right in the way of where you would need your arm to be when you're shifting. So in the manual Amiras, they are not as useful, but my water bottle can fit in the door pocket, which is also nice. And like I said, you have full screen CarPlay, so like that just makes this screen so functional, just like a normal vehicle. You have a great fully digital instrument cluster that has your tachometer at the top, what gear you're in, your speed layout. Lotus is a very low volume automaker. I was actually really surprised when I looked at the stats of how many cars they sell. I believe in 2021 they only sold about 160 vehicles in the United States. So they're much smaller than someone like Porsche, who sells thousands of cars every year. And I guess it makes sense, because until they come out with the Electre and the Amira, they really are only selling two-seater sports cars. But God, for being such a small company, they make incredible vehicles. I only have this car for 48 hours, so these thoughts that I'm giving you aren't as developed as a typical video. But what I can tell you is this car is a blast, and I would love to have one of these to be able to take on a canyon like this every single day. So that's the Lotus Amira. It is a beautiful car, both in the way it looks and the way it drives. You know, if you have about $100,000 to spend on a sports car and you're hesitant to buy a Porsche 718 just like everyone else, get an Amira. You're gonna look way cooler and have just as much, if not more, fun owning it. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.